Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. We are here for another installment of bands who made two A+ albums, 10 out of 10 material, personal favorites, albums that I think they may not be completely flawless, but they are close enough to count as perfect. I've done some videos on this before with different genres of heavy metal. Don't know exactly what order these will get released in, so maybe I've already done several of these. Maybe this will be the second one. Who knows? Again, I record some videos well in advance, especially at the time I'm recording these. Holidays are approaching. That can be a very busy time. Gets a little harder to make some videos until I get into winter break and stuff. So it doesn't hurt to have a few fun, easy videos put together that I can roll out during those really busy weeks. For the genre we're diving into on this episode, it's going to be doom metal, but also combined with sort of, I guess you'd say, epic metal. And I think for the bands I've chosen, there's definitely a crossover into doom territory, at least on the albums that I tend to rank as A+ material. Well, I'll explain as we go through. I'll also have one non-metal band at the end of the video, as I've been doing with the others in this series. I'm kind of putting in one non-metal one for fun rather than doing a single episode that's only non-metal material. It'd be a week where we'd be like, let's not talk metal, and that's not the name of the channel, so I didn't want to go there. Regular disclaimers. These are ranked as my favorites, the albums I personally like enough to give them that perfect grade. I don't give a lot of A pluses, and there are very few bands that I feel have gotten two A+ albums out there. But I'm not claiming these are the most important albums or biggest albums or the most genre defining albums. They're just the ones that I personally like this much. You'll probably disagree with some of my picks. That's quite okay. Feel free to add your own choices in the comments down below. It's always cool to see what other people kind of hold down the highest level for their personal favorites and different styles. Without further ado, let's hop into this. The first band almost single-handedly defines doom metal, and they're a long-running act. Tons of great albums, should be no surprise. We're going to begin with Candlemass. And the first A+ album, in my opinion, is their second full length, Nightfall. To a lot of people, this almost feels like their debut because it is the one where Messiah Marcolin comes on board with vocals. They get a much stronger kind of production on this album. The classic artwork comes in that would unite this with the follow-up album and a similar theme even on the third album. But yeah, it's technically their second. The debut, Epicus, is fantastic as well. I love that album a lot. But I think this one does edge it out a bit in terms of ranking. You've got so many classics in here, not just Candlemass classics, but doom metal masterpieces. The Well of Souls is a brilliant opener, just right off the bat. Messiah with this, big vibrato kind of baritone, just sucking you into their world. Love the opening to that. Just, those first few lines before the band crashes in, so heavy. At the Gallows End was the first song I ever heard by the band. As soon as I heard it, I had to go track down albums by this band. I heard it on one of the Best of Metal Blade compilations. I want to say it was volume 3, but that was 33 years ago, so I might be wrong about that. I don't have that compilation anymore. But yeah, that song, I was immediately heading to the local record stores hoping to find a Candlemass album. And I did, but I couldn't afford it. I had to come back a couple of weeks later when I had a little more money. Yeah, the, that's how I rolled back then. What else have we got here? Samaritan, one of the sort of just, yeah, most sublime, real tear jerker kind of stories, but in a good way. I mean, it really, hits those heartstrings, tugs on your emotions a ton. You've also got Dark Are the Veils of Death, fantastic track, and closes with Bewitched, which just has that great spooky vibe to it. So yeah, we've got how many classics is that? Well of Souls, At the Gallows End, Samaritan, Dark Are the Veils of Death, and Bewitched. Yeah, five absolute classics there. The other tracks were very good too. The nitpick on this album is there's 10 tracks listed. I said there were five classics. It's not that the others are bad, it's that several of them are just interlude pieces. Gothic Stone, kind of an intro piece. Black Candles, kind of an outro piece. Uh, Codex Gigas, another interlude. Um, there's too many of those little short segments. An album doesn't need that many. Granted, they fit pretty well here. And with all of these songs just being so monstrously huge and over the top and epic and doomy and memorable, it is kind of nice to have some little breathers in between them. But I still think that's just too many. You didn't need quite that many space filler parts, even though none of them sound bad. Take a couple of those away, you might could have put one more song on here. I don't know if you even need another full-length song on here. But if nothing else, it's a little deceptive when you see that, the track list is 10 songs, and then you play it and you realize like there's actually like about six, quote unquote, real full-length tracks on here. It's like, huh, that is great. Those are great songs, but it feels a little odd. But nevertheless, Nightfall gets an A plus. For the second A plus in the Candlemass discography, Ancient Dreams, fantastic. I don't quite give it an A plus. Same with the follow-up on that, Tales of Creation. Love the album. Not quite A plus. The next A plus one is a bit of a dark horse in their catalog, but for me, From the 13th Sun is an absolute beast of an album. This is from that difficult 90s period that so many bands had issues with. You've got a different, lineup here, different vocalist, and Candlemass is operating in a very different flavor of doom at this point in their career. Leaf Idling's really showing, his 70s love for things like Black Sabbath and probably, some of the different prog-minded darker bands from that decade. On a very simple base level, From the 13th Sun feels like an ode to early Black Sabbath. And if you enjoy it on that level, absolutely, it works great. It's one of the most sincerely Sabbath sounding albums that isn't a Black Sabbath album. There's lots of bands that try to clone or ape Black Sabbath sound. That's not what's really happening here. It just feels like these guys wrote an album that's very true to the spirit of albums circa Master of Reality. And it is, yeah, very cool album. There's a lot of diversity here. There are other influences subtly worked in, as there were on Black Sabbath albums. So again, I think that's one of the things that makes this one really stand out among the Black Sabbath crowd of, worshipers. This isn't just trying to sound like Paranoid. This is drawing in a lot of maybe the similar influences or that Black Sabbath had when they were working on that material. That's something that gets lost on a lot of bands over time. When Black Sabbath was making albums, they had listened to all kinds of different things, mixed them together, came up with their sound. When bands heard Black Sabbath, they just tried to sound like Black Sabbath, but they didn't have the same musical background. There wasn't the same breadth of influences because they were just trying to sound like Sabbath. So they may sound like Sabbath, but you lose those other special ingredients. They kind of start getting filtered out over time. You see it with any band that spawns a lot of clones. Maiden clones, Priest clones, they may do a good job of copying that band, but how many Priest clones would ever do something like Last Rose of Summer or Genocide? No. How many Maiden clones would do things like Strange World? No. They're all just doing Killers, versions of that. Priest clones are doing their own versions of Screaming for Vengeance. You lose that kind of diversity of influence. Candlemass really represents that diversity of influence on From the 13th Sun. Can I nitpick this album? I don't like the song titles. Most of them are single one-word titles that are kind of nebulous. A very 90s kind of thing to do. I mean, song titles. Droid, Tot. We have a Zog, a Galatia, Galatia, Galatia. I don't know. Cyclo F, Mythos. It does kind of sometimes make it hard to remember which song is which. Oh, that really cool, spoken bridge part. Is that in Zog or Tot? I don't know. To be fair, some of these do have meaning and roots to them. I've made fun of them in the past, but others, including like Jurgen has pointed out, like tot is, I think, it's Germanic root for death. So it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense here. Might have been cooler if they just called it death. I'm not sure. Would have been at least a little more intuitive, but maybe they wanted it to be obscure on purpose. Other than having some trouble keeping song titles straight, yeah, the album is a bit of an overlooked masterpiece in my mind. It gets the second A plus. So two for Candlemass. Lots of other great albums in their discography, but those are the two I would give the A plus ranking. Speaking of Black Sabbath, I might as well go ahead and address that. Two albums in their catalog that I think are A plus representatives. The first is their third album, Master of Reality. This, I'm trying to remember if this was my introduction to Sabbath or not. It was one of the first two I heard. I have a feeling the first thing I heard was actually We Sold Our Souls to Rock and Roll. One of the other kids in high school had a copy of that and let me make a cassette copy of it. So I think that was the first time I heard Sabbath. If so, this was the first time I heard like one of their proper studio albums and liked it right off the bat. Actually, one of my dad's friends had this in her record collection and let me borrow it. And I played it and played it and played it for a couple of weeks. And she was cool. She didn't care when I got it back to her. But yeah, of all the early Sabbath albums, yes, Paranoid has the hits, and the self-titled, that's, The Dawn of Heavy Metal, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is the prog album. And a lot of people consider Sabotage, the masterpiece and all that. And then the next two are the sort of overlooked gems. I don't share that opinion with folks, but a lot of folks do love Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, and that's cool if they like them. They have their moments. They're not, I don't think they're the great albums overall. This is a great album. Yeah, a quick look at the track list here. We've got, of course, Sweet Leaf, starting with the iconic cough. And, just that first big riff. It helps spawn doom metal and stoner metal and all kinds of fuzzy things in between different genres, even outside of metal. After Forever, one of the songs that's, great, got them in a little bit of trouble because all people heard was, the one line about, hanging the Pope, took it completely out of context and, wanted to vilify them. And that always surprised me a lot with Sabbath. If anybody would bother to read all the bloody lyrics, most of their songs are like singing, they're warnings not to fall into evil and promoting peace and love and trying to save your soul. And of course, people turned it around and like, oh, it must mean exactly the opposite. They said the word Lucifer. They obviously worship the devil and are trying to like astral project and steal my soul and stuff. It's like, ah, reading comprehension. Just read the whole bloody thing, not three words, and assume you know what they're doing. Always bugs me. You've got, embryo, nice, weird little sounding instrumental. Set you up for Children of the Grave. I've always wondered if that song, more than anything else, helped inspire Steve Harris when he started writing all those big galloping riffs and rhythms for Iron Maiden a few years down the road. Uh, Side B, equally great. Orchid is cool. Lord of this World, I like the track a lot, very heavy. One of my favorites on the album is the follow-up, though, Solitude, the really quiet one where Tony Iommi plays the flute again. And Ozzy sings in this, just, very clear, calm voice. It's such an unusual track for him, and he delivers it with such sincerity. And it's a song, that's, kind of, sad, but very peaceful and tranquil at the same time. I think it's a beautiful piece of music, one of the best in the whole Sabbath discography. It's not talked about very much, but it's always made a great impact on me. And of course, we close out with Into the Void. Again, just monster, heavy, fuzzy, stonery, doomy goodness. It's a masterpiece of an album. Can I nitpick this one? I'll nitpick it because Master of Reality, for some reason in my head, it's always Masters of Reality because as a band, like they each together as a group, they are the masters of reality. So I'm bad to say masters of reality, but it's master of reality. Okay, that's not a nitpick. That's just me not remembering the name of the album half the time. I so very much want this to be my favorite Black Sabbath album, and it should be. But there's one little problem with that. Yeah, when you vote on these kind of things and try to weigh out, sometimes at the end of the day, the mob rules. Yeah, obviously a different era, different vocalist. Mob Rules has just always steadily climbed and climbed and climbed to the point where it's probably one of my top five albums of all time in heavy metal. Um, yeah, people, it's always interesting to me how many people, prefer Heaven and Hell, and then how many people prefer this one over Heaven and Hell. It's a great one-two punch for that era of the band. This is the one for me out of that pair. It's an almost flawless track list. Turn Up the Night is one of the best album openers of all time. Voodoo, Dio magic just oozing through that track. Sign of the Southern Cross is like Heaven and Hell, but probably slightly better, which is hard to imagine, but there you go. You've got the little instrumental, was it E5150, which again, kind of like Orchid or Embryo, a little distorted weirdness, kind of messes with your equilibrium, but sets you up to be crushed by the mob rules. Side two, Country Girl's a terrible song title, but a fun song. It works absolutely fine. Great, one of, Ronnie's witchy women kind of songs. The only song I have a little issue with on this album, Slipping Away, feels a little bit staid to me. Not a bad track, but it doesn't have the same level of just awesomeness the rest of these do. Falling Off the Edge of the World, great track, gets overlooked late in the track list, but love that one. Great manic, almost panicked delivery. And then Over and Over is a, sublime album cover, just wrapping the whole thing up. Great performance on that one. Yeah, mob rules from the cover art to the track list to the, great dirty sounding production on it by Martin Birch. You don't get much better than that. All right. Band number three for this. Now here's where we're getting into bands that really aren't, again, people can argue about whether Black Sabbath should be called Doom or not. Some folks are like, well, they predate Doom. Others like they're the original Doom. Whatever. Yeah, all these bands have that really over-the-top heavy sound. But these next two do get into more epic territory. Uh, so band number three for this episode is going to be Manilla Road. Manilla Road has a very long discography over the years. Loved band. People, have a strong attachment to Mark Shelton and his work. Did a lot of good albums, but I think there's two moments of true brilliance in the catalog. And the first of those, no big surprise, is Crystal Logic. This was my introduction to the band. It was kind of, something, again, wanted to check them out. Somebody, actually, Chris, I think I mentioned him in one of the other episodes of this A plus plus kind of series. Yeah, he dubbed a couple of Manilla Road albums onto a 90-minute TDK for me. This was the first thing when I hit play and immediately blew me away. This is definitely the band's like heaviest, doomiest offering. I don't think there's much contesting that. And I kind of went back and forth on whether it was my favorite or one of the others, but over time, this one has definitely won out. Yeah, the opening Necropolis is one of my favorite songs of all time. Love that. This one has Flaming Metal Systems. That's a bonus track. It was on one of the US metal comps. But you have Crystal Logic is a great crushing heavy one. Feeling Free Again has a different vibe to it. It's a little bit more of that kind of, biker vibe. Might have been more on Home on the Metal album that predated this, but not a bad song at all. Riddle Master is the overlooked gem. That song is masterfully done. Manila Road was great at doing these, short story songs. A lot of them with a basis on something like an old, Robert Howard short story, or maybe an, Clark Ashton Smith kind of story. Other ones on here, The Ram's a great track on the second half. Veils of Negative Existence, really kind of, amping up a little bit creepy, maybe slightly more proggy. Just, yeah, great. And of course, Dreams of Eschaton works great as well. So yeah, really not a bad moment on the album at all. I've mentioned this in other videos, but in case anybody's unaware of it, if you have the original of an original vinyl pressing, they of course did it on their own Roadster records first, and a couple of years later it was licensed by Black Dragon in Europe. The Black Dragon pressing is actually sped up a little bit. It is at a faster speed. I guess they messed with the mastering or something. I don't know tons of the details on how that stuff gets done. But you can hear it right away if you just play that little intro to Necropolis and Necropolis itself. If you like A, B, put them side by side and listen to the Roadster version of the song and then the Black Dragon version of the song, you can clearly hear a difference in the speed that it's playing at. It sounds great both ways. Um, I think I probably heard the Black Dragon version first, so I'm a little used to the a little more used to the faster versions, but the slightly slower takes are just crushingly heavy. It's great no matter what speed it's at. That's how good an album it is. You can actually mess with the speed on the master and it still slays 99% of the albums I've ever heard. So what's their second A plus entry? Well, for me, it's the follow-up, Open the Gates. And for a long time, this was my favorite. It kind of eked out Crystal Logic a little bit for a long time. For me, it's their second heaviest album, the other one that has a really strong doomy aura to it, more so than others. After this one, when you start getting into the things from more of the mid 80s and into the late 80s, I feel like the band gradually got more and more of a thrash influence. This was the first appearance for the new drummer, and he kind of started getting a little fancier, which again takes a little bit of the emphasis off the epic doomy aura of these albums. Made the band feel, a little more aggressive, a little more thrashy. I've never known if that was a conscious decision in the band. I mean, let's face it, they didn't get a lot of exposure early on. And by the mid 80s, thrash was the going thing. Maybe they did start to have some of that influence rub off on them. Maybe they wanted some of that to come through in the music to try to get at least an inkling of attention from a label or something. I don't know. That's completely conjecture on my part. I'm not trying to speak for them or read between the lines. I don't know what their intent was, but I just know that, yeah, albums, certainly by the time you get to like Into the Abyss, but even before that, Mystification, those albums are a lot more aggressive feeling. They don't have as many songs that really focus on this big, grand, doomy, epic sound, and that's what I like the most. Those albums, some of them, Dragon Star, great track. But this one, yeah, killer track list throughout. Metal Strum starts, and even on that one, you can start to hear them getting more aggressive, heavy but aggressive. Open, excuse me. Open the Gates. Yeah, that's perfect. Grand Manilla Road for me. Astronomica. Yep. Shelton showing why he was the man. Weavers of the Web is cool. The Ninth Wave is just glorious in the way it builds. And different pressings, you may have the track list in different order than this. Seems like I've had different pressings with different track orders. So if this seems like a weird listing, that's the thing. Heavy Metal to the Worlds, yeah, pretty straightforward, not bad. Fires of Mars is brilliant, fantastic, very, very regal sounding. Road of Kings and Hour of the Dragon, both good too. Witch's Brew is good. Always is a little weird that, Witch's Brew is track 10 and then track 12 is a live version of Witch's Brew. I don't like it when the bonus tracks are just a different take on one of the last couple of tracks because it almost feels like you're hearing it twice back to back, which is a little strange to me. But yeah, whatever. That's a really minor nitpick here. A plus album, even if it is, my second favorite. All right, another band that kind of straddles that epic and doom quality is a band I go on and on about a lot. It is Atlantian Codex. This is a band I think has three A plus albums. They've also only made three albums, so they're batting 100 in my book. But yes, I honestly think all three of their albums are deserving of top marks. Yeah. The debut is The Golden Bough. For some people, like, the production here may be a little on the rough side. The band is still, to some small extent finding their footing, but I think the songs are already so great that it absolutely overcomes any minor shortcomings about production or that maybe things can be a little tighter here and there. Fountain of Nepenthe, great. Pilgrim, majestic. Uh, let's see. Atlantian Codex is another one that will have some little interludes thrown in here and there. Temple of Catholic Magic is an absolute glorious song. That's the kind of thing you want playing when you ride out of the gates of Valhalla. Crushing, great bridge. One of the best moments in heavy metal of the 21st century. Oh, what else have we got here? Disciples of the Iron Crown. That one took a little while to warm up. It's a much more direct song. It's a very fast, pretty aggressive song. It almost at first feels like it's trying to go a little too fast and aggro for what they do, but it has grown on me. It works fine. Let's see. Vesperal Hymn's probably the track that sticks the least on here. The eponymous The Atlantian Codex is a song they had done earlier and recorded earlier than this, and I do like the earlier version better, but it sounds fantastic here. Prophet in the Forest, a great way to close it out. Well, there's technically an outro for the Golden Bough, but yeah, everything on here is, well, golden. Ha. They followed it up with the White Goddess. Another one, just absolute great stuff. The lead, Trumpets of Daggerland, is the intro to Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus is my favorite Atlantean Codex song. It's 9+ minutes, unrelenting, just amazing material. The riffs, just the never lets up. Lyrically, you could probably write an entire thesis about the stuff they're talking about here. Let's see, what else do we have after Sol Invictus? Heresiarch is an amazing song, slower but great. 12 stars in an azure gown. Beautiful, serenely done song. Really showcases the great vocal delivery. Enthroned in Clouds and Fire. Love that one quite a bit. And I've got the hype or the little ceiling stickers on the back there. Am I missing a track at the end? I don't think so. And that's the only shortcoming on this album that you have Sol Invictus, Heresiarch, 12 stars, and Enthroned in Cloud and Fire. So there's 8 tracks, but only four like full-length songs. And it's like, oh, I just want a little bit more out of it. Please, sir, may I have another, sir? Yeah, you can. You can have their third album, 2019's The Course of Empire. It's really hard to choose among these 3 albums, but I guess if you had to pick one as the best of the 3, it probably has to be this one. It all comes together even better. You wanted a little more, maybe, than the White Goddess. You want those rough edges sanded off from the debut. Force of Empires got you covered. I won't break this one down track by track. We've done enough of that for Atlantean Codex, but yeah, there are moments on here that really just transcend anything else I've heard any other band do in the last 25 years of heavy metal. And again, some people will disagree. This is not the band for everybody. It is my band. It's the only band in this video series that I can think of where their first, well, no, Halloween, their first 3 albums, also all A+ material. Atlantean Codex does that as well. Several bands have had maybe a run of albums strung together that would get that, like Blind Guardian, but it wasn't their first 3. All right, let's see. Covered all the like epic doom heavy kind of stuff. So that means it's time for our non-metal artist with 2 A+ albums. And I can probably make a really good case for more than just 2, but it's only 2 that I really felt I wanted to highlight here. And it's Bruce Springsteen. Some of you like Springsteen, some of you hate Bruce Springsteen, whatever, that's fine. I've come to really enjoy a lot of the man's work over the years. And the first A+ one I would shout out here is Darkness on the Edge of Town, which is album number 4. I don't have his whole discography nailed down in my head, but I'm pretty sure this is album number 4. Um, this is an interesting one. It comes several years after Born to Run, and most people point to that as like his masterpiece. It's a great album. It has some of his best songs. Born to Run, there are parts of it I'm not, huge on though. But nevertheless, Born to Run has, this very sort of positive vibe about it. It's, this huge, big rock and roll sound. It's influenced by all kinds of stuff, including Phil Spector and the Wall of Sound production. It has some similarities to Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell, which came a little later. Folks have accused Meatloaf, of kind of, and his writer, was it John Silverman? Of kind of, borrowing ideas from that concept. But the bottom line, it's this, Springsteen with this kind of very bright, positive, looking forward, the dream of Americana with a very positive light. But then there's a few years in between Born to Run and Darkness at the Edge of Town, which in the 70s is kind of unusual. I mean, you wasn't weird for bands to put out two albums in a 12-month period back then. So, having a gap of, I want to say about at least 2, maybe 3 years before this came out, that's a long gap for an artist back then. And in those years, Springsteen, you could tell, did a lot of growing up. 3 years while you're in your mid 20s can make a big difference. Pretty sure it was mid 20s at that point. Again, I don't know his life story in and out. But on this album, as it implies right there in the title, Darkness on the Edge of Town, this is him looking at some of those same concepts of Americana that he visited on Born to Run. But now he's looking at them through, a much more sober kind of lens. The rose-tinted glasses have been put away, and now you're kind of seeing it, in the stark, harsh daylight, And for me, that, resonates and impacts me a bit stronger. There are lots of, great examples of this on here. Of course, the track list is very small and hard to read. Let's see if I can read them off the disc a little better. Badlands is a really strong opener it's one of the songs on here that has a little bit more of a defiant vibe to it. That, they are going to sort of maybe try to, force this cruel world to bend and be the way they want it to. Adam Raised a Cain is a miss for me. I just don't care for the song. Something in the Night is gorgeous and, yeah, really a soul-searching kind of number. And again, this is the dark mirror to tracks from Born to Run. Here, they're not driving down the street looking for good times, devil may care attitude. Here, they're driving around looking to get stone drunk and forget about all the horrible things that are happening and how their life has gotten completely derailed. That's the kind of impact you get with some of these tracks. Carly's Room is or sorry, Candy's Room is sort of a strange one. It feels a little bright and hopeful, but it's also him like being a little too infatuated with like the local prostitute. Okay. Racing in the Street is another one. It sounds like it's going to be like, oh yeah, another, fun and fast teenage times, but it's really not. It's really not. It's a very powerful track. What else do we have here? Promised Land. Again, catchy, good chorus to it, but it's singing about how the American dream can really wear you down, not just lift you up. Factory is that way also quite a bit. Streets on Fire that way. Prove It All Night is a little bit more of like a hit single track type track. Not bad, not a personal favorite. And Darkness on the Edge of Town is, yeah, this is a dark album, and I think it is a fantastic album. So what's my second choice? It's not Born to Run, although I do love it. I kind of want to pick Nebraska here. Nebraska is, another one that's very bleak. There are a few tracks on Nebraska that I feel are slight misses, and there were some slight misses on Darkness. I could make a case for Nebraska, but I bypassed that one and went for the sentimental, nostalgic favorite, which is Born in the USA. Again, to a lot of people, this is just, mindless 80s pop music. You still hear the song played at every bloody political rally you can imagine. They never once stop and read the lyrics and realize that it's a, a song about how horribly Vietnam veterans were being treated 10 years after the war. All they hear is happy keyboards. Wow, party on, dude. Dude, it's a real shame that happens. Again, people may disagree about this one, and it is a very bright and happy sounding album with all the synthesizer layers on it and stuff. But again, a lot of the songs are, much more down to earth. And to some people, I guess that comes across as, kitschy or something. It never has struck me as the least bit cheesy or contrived or anything. It is very genuine to me. This was a huge album when I was a kid. It's one I borrowed, actually, now that I think about it, probably about the same time I borrowed Master of Reality from the same friend of my dad. And yeah, I learned most of these songs inside and out. I could probably still sing along to almost every track on this. It's a great album. It's a fun album, but there's the fun, catchy, poppy side of it. But then there's also the, uh, again, sad, somber, serious nature to the lyrics on a lot of the songs too. And so, yeah, if the boss is not your thing, that's quite okay. But I think those two albums are great, and I do like a lot of the other albums in his catalog also. That'll do it for this episode. Now let's talk metal in the comments down below. What are some of the, heavier, doomier, or more epic flavored metal bands who you think have two perfect albums? And which albums are those? People's picks will be very different from mine. That's great. Lots of bands have one album I think might be A plus material, but I couldn't come up with a second one to, add it. And the whole point of, this little video series was bands that had two A plus albums, not just one, not an A plus and a close, but maybe not quite there. They both have to be top notch to make it onto the list. So that's what I've got. I'm interested to see what you've got on your lists. Until next time, everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.